Shalom. So let's have a quick talk about the devil, Shaitan, Satan, connection to the word Lucifer, and also the angel Samael came up. So in response to these terms, we first have to examine how they apply with one each other, where they're interchangeable, where they're not. So the first thing that I want to point out is that the word Lucifer doesn't come originally out of the Hebrew. So if I'm not mistaken, it's Latin. And in the same likeness, I speak English, and in English, they call the figure Jesus, but in Espanol, they call the same figure Jesus. So it's well understood that when discussing this particular figure, because where my language is English, I'm only generally referring to this individual as Jesus, whereas it's understood that someone else would use Jesus repeatedly. So this is the same likeness where there's any divergence with the word Lucifer versus some of the other understandings. So one would have to come from the angle of the language itself and see where it was brought in to apply to which entity we're actually talking about or understanding. So the next point is to talk about Satan or Shaitan. And so first of all, we have to remove the concepts of what we think that is, because whatever our past experience is, whatever we've been told or whatever we've been shown, or whatever things that we collect, like cartoons we've seen and we think as memories, we try to apply and project onto reality, but reality doesn't work that way. And so we're going to examine where the words, first of all, Satan and Shaitan, they come from the same. The Hebrew root is shin, tet, and nun. Because in Hebrew, the original root of the word, shin is sh sound. S derives a root from that. And so Satan is S-A-T-A-N in English. In Hebrew, it's shin, tet, nun. And so where does this fall come from? We hear that he falls from heaven, 1/3 of heaven fell with him. And so when we analyze these ideas, one thing we want to understand is in Hebrew language, there are 22 perfect letters called the Holy Tongue. The 22 letters have 7 that fall in the center of this sphere. Those 7 are Shin, Tet, Nun, Ein and Zain, Sadi and Gimel. And when they descend, they go from a circular, where all things are circular at the highest and lowest levels, like planets and molecules, to a linear pattern. And the linear pattern connects the 2 points. And this is where the place of Kesed, Geburah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Isad, Malchut descend. And this creates the exact example we have of our finger being round and yet a line or a tree, and many things in this place of existence in our reality, which is called Malchut. So as Shaitan, Shin, Tet, Nun fell, so does his friends Azza and Uzazel, that's Ein and Zain. The Mashiach that fell in a pit, that's Sadi, that's Sadiq. And then Malchut is Gimel, the camel that he rode down on, that Samael rode down on. So we have this host, and by name, these letters, which are messengers. Messengers convey a message. Each letter has information held within it like a zip file. And when one looks at the letter Shin, they have to understand that letter Shin actually represents fire or covering for the light. So these 7 that fall, when you take 22 letters, which represent as a sphere the entirety of all existence and all things possible and then some, it accounts for God. And it must be a reduced form. We've already reduced the light because God couldn't be anything as small as letters in the first place, although he most certainly is the letters. Only through the letters we'll be able to access what it is to get to know him. When you take these 22 letters and divide them by the 7 that fall, the division is 3.14 infinity. And so now we've also accounted for that. And so we also have this God that's infinite, because we can even mathematically track that, which helps us from down here. So, what does Shaitan rule over? The underworld. And where do we find him? In this place where there is called division. Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet. Shin, Tet, Nun. Those primary three letters. And in essence and likeness, all things in the image of the same pattern of a tree on top of a tree. And these concepts are very deep, and there's a lot more learning to go with it. Baruch Hashem, we're blessed to be able to see it. But you can see in our friend's neck, you can see the colors where Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet start the chain that starts below the skull. And many people would equate those top 7 vertebrae in likeness to the 7 that fell originally from the skull, like as our human body develops. And you'll find that key organs are tethered to those 7 and they control them. So the next question is Samael. Where does he fit into this? Well, there's different ranks and files for the legions of Hashem, angels, and believe it or not, demons, because all things serve God. And that's the misconception, is that Satan is opposed to God somehow. That's impossible. Whoever served her of a servant going against their master. Indeed, certain serves Hashem, but people don't like that side of God. They don't like the side that spanks. So most assuredly, he handles all the holiness and the good stuff, but there's klipa that needs to be removed, and there's a place for that to happen as well. And in the same likeness, we go to the bathroom, yet we're made in the likeness of the Holy One. So as we look at these amazing concepts, and we're able to tether together some of this idea of what we might be looking at, we can also understand that Samael has to be a stack of letters that represent that name, and every entity has its name as we've spoken. In this case, Samek, the letter S, which represents cycles, Mem, which represents both water, and Mem Sofit is always together with that letter, Mayim. So we have earth and stone accounted for. So AL at the end of a word usually denotes that it's an angel or an upper version, which has to do with the above, rather than the Vav Nun, which is a bound soul down below. And all of us are made in this amazing stack of above and below. As above, so below is often quoted. The Vav Nun is the bound soul. Down below, we have vessels. Up above, we have forms. And these forms above are the AL, it's the angels. So in the likeness, Ima bows to Abba, the left hand bows to the right. And this has to do with flesh is in bone and bone is in flesh. In the same likeness that the Vav Nun, or the demons, are on the lower rung, and the angels, the Aleph Lameds, are on the upper rung. And all of these answer to the Holy One, blessed be He, which is above all of this. This is only covering the lower forms. Because as we see, as an example here, these 7 that fall represent Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Esod, and Malchut. And these are the way that an infinite entity expresses itself down here. Because you are connected to an infinite, infinite being. But here you're expressed in a finite form, And you can see the likeness in the small macrocosm of inside our mind. We can imagine anything's potential there. But in reality, nothing is done. We don't even control the breath we make or the heartbeat that pumps within us. So these forms, they cover our spirit form, our desire form, our holy form, our soul form, our emotion form, our mental form, and down at the very bottom is our physical form. We have these forms, we are none of these forms. And thankfully, Master Yurit has brought this information forward and helped repair the breach. The restoration of the breach is at hand, because this kind of information is really important. It's very technical, and it's needed for the future to understand, because we have to remove the fantasy and imaginings that come up with when we see stories. Remove the things that aren't real and really apply truth, Amet Yaakov. So ponder these things. Definitely look for Master Yurit's works, Sefer Yurit. and seek the further information on this. Thanks for taking time to find out Shem Aleph Mem Shem.